Here we go, gamers. And breaking news. In addition to World vs. World restructuring coming up August 12th, we've also got this. Or whatever it is. August 12th? I don't know, something like that. We've got some really, really cool balance changes. ArenaNet are actually really delivering on this, and they're taking accountability as well. Before we even get into the notes, I actually want to scroll all the way down so everyone sees this. This is really important. We badly missed the mark with banner changes in the June update. We've gone back to the drawing board to be bolder with changes and add more powerful utility and make banners easier to use. Each banner will now do its most powerful effects immediately on use and have a much shorter base cooldown of 30 seconds. This is massive. They admit that, yeah, they screwed it up and they're going to try it again differently, and they've acted relatively quickly as well. And I actually think that's very important. I'm going to do Chronomancer now, but I just really wanted to hit on that really early on because I want to give some serious kudos to ArenaNet for actually owning the mistake and rectifying it relatively quickly. I know it's been a while. It was June 28th, so it is going to be around a month, which sucks for Warriors, right? But big respect here. It's not easy to own your mistakes, and they are doing that right now. And you know what? Good. Very good. So let's leap into the other changes here as well, because the other thing that was mentioned in the previous kind of update notes was that they were looking to change the damage output of Chronomancer, specifically Boon Chronomancer, so quickness or alacrity chrono. So let's take a look at see what they've done here, and we've got some reasoning here as well. Similar to the recent tuning on ranger weapons, the following are a small set of changes focused on improving damage capability of Chronomancer builds in PvE. Improvements to Greatsword and Sword, as well as a significant damage increase added to the Chronomancer's improved alacrity trait, which will increase the performance of both damage and boon support Chronomancer builds. Let's go ahead and take a look at what they did. So in Greatsword, the Spatial Surge increased minimum damage. This is Greatsword auto attack. Increase the damage multiplier from 0.69 to 0.8, and the maximum, so at maximum range, from 1.005 to 1.1. Basically, it's a 10% damage increase on Greatsword auto attacks. That is actually it's pretty relevant on some Virtuoso builds, I would say, is where you're going to see this. Particularly seeing as Phantasmal Berserker, initial damage is up a lot, 0.4 to 1.2, and the same with Mindstab. Again, this ranged area attack, the third skill on Greatsword, 1.0 to 1 minute. That's a lot of extra damage. That's a lot of extra damage. So in general, the Greatsword kit is getting a fair bit better. It was actually already used, by the way, right? This is actually something to note, actually. Like, for example, we were running Greatsword Virtuosos on Harvest Temple Challenge mode because it allows you to have a really good DPS uptime, right? Whatever weapon set you're on, with either your Greatsword or, of course, your dagger set at the same time. And it also has boon removal on it as well, which was very important to dealing with the mass boon application. So I think this makes Greatsword like a very strong option. And yeah, this is going to be a DPS increase. This is kind of the difficulty here with buffing weapons, is that it makes every build better. I think they want to make like the Greatsword Sword Shield Chronomancer build better. That's what they're looking to do here. However, they're going to make every power Mesmer spec better, which, you know, it's a side effect, but I think it's an okay side effect. They can obviously tone down the Virtuoso Blade songs if that becomes oppressive, if it becomes too powerful at the end of the day. And sword damage modifier up a little bit. Honestly, not that much. This is basically sword auto attack. It's the first two in the auto attack as well, actually, which, you know, it's a minor buff, I guess. Again, this is very much aimed at kind of that power Chronomancer that gives quickness or alacrity at the same time. And we can see this fully compounded here with improved alacrity. This trait is pretty juicy now. In addition to its previous effects, this trait now also increases your critical strike damage by 10% when you have alacrity. This is a multiplier to total damage dealt, not additive with critical strike damage from ferocity. Okay, this is actually a really big buff. It's bigger than it sounds, by the way, because what this says is if you get a 10,000 damage crit, it doesn't increase it by it doesn't give you another 10% critical strike damage. It multiplies that damage by 1.1. So instead of giving you like more ferocity, it's giving you just 150 ferocity, right? 10% crit damage. This is way more than that. It would modify that critical strike to 11,000, right? Just gives you an extra like big chunk of damage there. This is a very strong buff in my opinion. Particularly seeing as this is like a very good utility to have anyway. You can use your utility skills way more often to do this because you have mega alacrity, right? So alacrity is even stronger on you, so better cooldown reduction. So this is definitely a nice buff, and it's going to move Chrono up a little bit, for sure. Now, I do have to criticize the design a little bit because, one, it's in the same tier as Danger Time, which you kind of need to crit cap anyway, and Mesmer is very bad at crit capping here, in my opinion. It's like very, very bad at it, right? You have to run like a zillion Assassin's Pieces to even make this work, and you already have a damage trait in this trait line. One of them gives you crit damage, one of them gives you precision now. To be honest, I've got to criticize that design because it just doesn't really feel right. I think it would have been better to maybe look at critical strike chance on Mesmer in general. Maybe look at Fury being a little bit better if you're in the dueling trait line. Like maybe add some crit modifier traits, like extra 10% crit in the dueling trait line. The other aspect of this design that I actually have to criticize a little bit here is actually this concept of the multiplier compared to ferocity. This leads to very confused players, in my opinion, because when ArenaNet make traits like this, they say it increases your critical strike damage by 10%. But the thing is, that's actually quite ambiguous unless you know what that means, right? I think they should either pick crit damage modifiers or ferocity. They shouldn't have both. I think it's confusing and unnecessary. They could have easily made this trait just give you, say, 300 ferocity, right? Or something like that. It might have to be a little bit more because 10% crit damage is actually really good. I don't know why they didn't do that. In my mind, these modifiers just slightly obfuscate the game, and I just don't think that's really what the game needs. So I'm always going to bang on about that. I feel like I talk about that in every single one of my balance videos, but I have to hit that. And yeah, the other thing is it does, again, it competes with the other damage trait. I also think that this really clearly demonstrates that they don't really want damage chrono to be a thing. So if there are any power chrono fans in the chat, you might be out of luck. It's very obvious, in my opinion, that they want power chrono or the Chronomancer to be a bit more support focused, and Virtuoso is going to be the DPS build. So if you want to give Alacrity or quickness, it's Chrono. If you want to play DPS, it's going to be Virtuoso. Because otherwise they would have, otherwise they probably would have looked at Danger Time, right, and made it so that, oh, while you have Alacrity, you get the 30% crit, and you get some more Ferocity or something like that, right? They could have had it like an Alacrity, you know, interaction trait. Or, I don't know, give Chrono more slow application so it can always get value out of Danger Time, for example, in PvE. Like, make Danger Time also apply a bunch of slow in some way, right? So it could actually have that uptime, right? So when it comes to support Chrono, will support Chrono come back? I'm actually going to have to say no. Not because this build is going to be bad, by the way. This build probably won't be bad. And Chrono has great utility. You have Portal, you can do stability with the Mantra, you can do Aegis, you can do Focus Pull, all that kind of stuff. This build will actually end up being pretty damn good. The problem is that you kind of can't have all of that all in one go. And that's kind of where a lot of builds are right now. Even if you look at Herald. Look at Herald right now, guys. So Herald, it's going to give you a bit of might, fury, protection, swiftness, right? Quickness. You're going to have super speed. You're going to have stability with Chalice, Mega CC, all of that kind of stuff. And Firebrand, obviously, and Mechanist. These are very overloaded. And I think Mesmer just doesn't really have that, like, extreme versatility. I think it can do a lot of that, particularly if you run Shield. Like, Shield, you give protection. You can give a bit of might and swiftness as well, I think. Right, with, you know, with some of your other abilities, you know, you can give quickness with shield and alacrity, right? You can give might, a little bit of might in there as well. So maybe I'm a little bit pessimistic on that, because I guess Chrono is going to end up having some pretty decent boon access. You can probably fit well of precognition in on some of your builds at least. So maybe it can kind of come back into play here a little bit, as the damage is going to be significantly better right now. But I do just kind of get the feeling that it's not going to be quite enough, particularly as if you want to get value out of this damage, you're going to have to play Greatsword, which means you aren't going to play Focus. And if you aren't playing Focus, you're a bit screwed because you don't have that mega utility, right? And bear in mind, you have to play Shield now, right? Well, maybe not on Quickness, but you definitely do for Alacrity, right? You need the it's very clear they want you to play Shield. They kind of want you to. So I'd maybe look at Shield damage. You know, I think that's a bit weird because it's a defensive weapon. But maybe I'd make the damage on Shield a little bit better. Maybe adjust some of the durations on the boons so that you can actually take more utility skills and actually deliver value. Maybe make the Mantra radius of stability a little bit wider. Make well a precog, maybe like a touch. Maybe that skill's honestly fine. That skill doesn't have to be changed. But I do think Mesmer is going to need a little bit more, right? I don't think it quite stacks up to the current metagame and how strong certain builds are in the current metagame. But I do like the direction of the changes, despite having a few kind of gripes with the design direction they've taken. I definitely think that they've identified the issue and they've tried to tackle it. But I think Boon support Chronomancer needs a little bit more, to be honest, right? Like, even so, they actually do want the damage Chronomancer build to be good, but I don't quite see that in their actions, right? Like, if they wanted the DPS Chrono to be good, they maybe would have made Chrono Phantasma a little bit better. They maybe would have reduced the recharge of some of the Phantasms, right? Or something like that. Or they would have looked at the dueling trait line to give it more precision, because right now you're really screwed on precision on Mesmer. Maybe that's going to happen in the future, and that's going to happen down the line, but, we'll see. We'll see about that one with regards to Chronomancer. But yeah, it's not too bad. And actually, for this one, I'm gonna have to bring in a helper, I think. We're gonna talk about Warrior right now. We're gonna talk about banners. And I think we know who we need. I'm calling in Nike. Frog Overlord has arrived.
That's me.
Yep. So, tell me about Warrior. Because to me, these changes look pretty hype, actually. Pretty good, I think.
I think that the biggest impact from these changes is going to be in World v World, more so than PvE. I think that this makes, especially with double standard, like it makes it, you don't even have to be like a full support warrior. You can just bring Banner of Tactics before a fight, and it's actually just super high value. You could play like, I don't know, DPS Berserker, if that's what, like whatever the meta build is for that, and then just bring Banner of Tactics. And you're looking pretty good. And the AoE stun on the Banner of Strength is also probably really damn good in World v World too.
Yeah. It's going to be big on Spellbreaker, because of course that, so in the World versus World aspect, you can take
boons.
Yeah, it's going to immobilize, right, because it's a daze, because of no escape. It's going to remove a boon because of Dispelling Force, which will then remove another boon because of Enchantment Collapse at the same time. That is a nifty piece of utility there, right, to have, right? That is a juicy one. And of course,
and the elite skill. Yeah, the elite skill is only in PvE.
It's not Mega Day. It's only in PvE.
I was going to say a 4.0 coefficient in World v World.
That would be,
that would crack people.
And I actually think that, honestly, Banner of Tactics also seems really fucking good in World versus World 2. Stability access, super speed, which is huge as well. That's really nice to have super speed.
Then it pumps resistance.
Yeah, and then it's resistance, Now, of course, you can't move them, so it's going to be like, maybe you get like a tick or two, right? So it's not insane, especially seeing as the radius of these banners is down to 360, not 600, and you can't pick it up. But yeah, for sure. Like, it's definitely some interesting potential there from the World versus World perspective, I think.
It's pretty good also, just like is like in choke points and stuff, like where you really want to discourage the enemy from going through, or if you want to push through.
Exactly.
Like Banner of Tactics will let you push through a choke point, like pretty good.
So let's just actually just get a quick overview of what they've actually done here. So to address situations where it felt like the Warriors needed to continually adjust the positions of their banners, pulsing boons are now granted in an increased duration per pulse, but over a shorter amount of time. And that, in and of itself, is actually a really big deal. Because previously, on the banners that are in the game right now, and this is actually true on spirits as well, or it's not so much of an issue because you can move the spirits very easily, you don't really overcap. It just gave it, even with 100% boon duration, you didn't overcap, right? All you would do is you would continually refresh it, right? It would expire and then immediately reapply. That is actually very bad, especially when you consider that other quickness providers, specifically Firebrand and Scrapper and so on, do overcap. So in other words, you're not like reliant on always being in the exact same position. So that in itself is a massive design improvement in terms of how powerful it is, because being able to kind of not need to get full value out of the ability is a really big deal. It will no longer be necessary to stand around the banner for its full duration to upkeep banner boons. The durations will stack up more quickly. The reduced cooldowns allow warriors to use will allow them to use their powerful on-drop effects frequently. The radius and duration of banners have been reduced to better reflect this more focused role, and the previous ability for banners to grant quickness has been moved to the doubled standards trait. Or I guess all it needs to do now is move to tactics. Huh? But yeah, it's actually definitely looking up in that regard. So, again, these changes are here just basically reflected here. We have the recharges down to 30. Bear in mind, that's 24 with alacrity, by the way. That's actually relevant because the duration is 15 seconds. So your uptime on banners is actually very high, actually. And you're going to be overcapping boons, which is really, really nice, right? Our radius is down to 360 as well, and we get quickness when we drop our doubled standards. Now, doubled standards only affects the boons of the pulsing boons, not on the on-drop, which... I guess that's fine. I think they're maybe a little bit worried. You know what that actually says to me, Nike? It says that I think the base value on some of these initial boons might be quite high. It might be like quite a lot of stability, right? Like quite a long duration stack. That's kind of what I'm getting from that, which could be very powerful, actually. No.
Yeah.
So if we look at these on-drop effects, kind of from a PvE perspective, I think we've got to kind of imagine what does a build look like. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I imagine you've thought about this a fair bit by now. And I might sound a little bit boring here, but the likely build to come out of this seems to be Banner of Tactics and the Tactics trait line on something like a Blade Sworn, right? Or a Berserker. And you're gonna you're basically gonna give quickness, stability, and super speed. And that is what you deliver to your group, and very high DPS. That seems to me to be the plausible build. I'm not sure if I see some kind of mega, like running 1,000,000 banners build, right? I'm not totally sure about that. What do you think?
I think that is probably not the way I would play it because of double standards being so mandatory for the quickness build. I think that Condi Berserker with like enough Ritualist gear to get whatever boon duration. And I think someone mathed out that with no boon duration, you're going to have 66% quickness uptime. So you would need some boon duration, obviously, to get there. But I think you lose the least, and you don't have to go into tactics to do it. And so you could have like a viable like Condi damage boon build. I think would be the way to do it. Yeah, for sure. And Condi Berserker wants to be in discipline because that's where it gets the burning auto attacks on whatchamacallit.
And these effects are strong, right? I think if you could get away with it and still do decent DPS, I really don't mind, let's say, tactics and defense. That's like some really nifty utility. Right? You've got Barrier and Aegis, Stab, and Super Speed. And if you took those two banners, you give Quickness as well. Maybe if you have the Tactics trait line, right? For the, Martial Focus. Stuff like that. Like, that is,
I think Discipline is viable, too, if we don't know how many stacks of bleeding it applies. Yeah. But if it applies, like, a decent amount, then that also synergizes with it being, like, like a 20 to 25k DPS Condi build that also does a 100% quickness uptime.
Yeah, and spews out some other utility as well at the same time. So I don't mind that at all, actually, to be honest. And it almost feels like they want you to run the Elite Banner as well on something like, let's say, Berserker. Because if you do that, then you actually have some pretty interesting boon access. So let's say that you ran a Power Berserker build, right? Like, to utilize, like, all of this stuff. Which I think Power Berserker is maybe not doing so hot right now, but let's just imagine what that would look like. You could end up giving a good chunk of might uptime. It's like 2 stacks on Banner of Strength, 2 stacks on Battle Standard. Although I guess Battle Standard isn't permanent, is it, right? Because the cooldown is still pretty high. So that's kind of sad, because it's a revive skill, so they aren't going to reduce it that much. Well, that hasn't really worked, to be honest. But yeah, I think there is definitely some potential here. Like, I don't want to get people overhyped because, again, we haven't seen the numbers yet. This is going to be very numbers dependent, obviously. But my initial impression on this would actually be a little bit similar to Chronomancer. I'm not sure if we're going to see some kind of crazy meta shift off this. It probably needs a little bit more of a nudge. It probably needs a few more patches to really bring this up to speed with where a lot of the current builds are. But I would say it would be fair to say this is actually an excellent start on making Warrior deliver a huge amount of value, or potentially deliver a huge amount of value to the team, because the right words are here, right? I'm reading Barrier, Aegis, Stability, Quickness, Super Speed, right? Like, that sounds good. Resistance too. That's like a really cool boon to have access to. And bear in mind, that will be permanent, right? You'll be able to have like perma resistance essentially if you have a warrior in your subgroup. Pretty good.
It feels very similar to Herald at the moment, where you're in the situation where it does a lot of cool things, and the comparison is, okay, so what's the case use of taking it over Firebrand? And Herald actually has several case uses where it's better than Firebrand, like KC, VG, CA, stuff like that, where you want power, boon, quickness, Herald more than you want a Firebrand. And it's entirely possible that you could come up with the same sort of thing for Warrior. But since, I mean, just as my theory craft is that I think Condi is going to be the way to do it, that kind of, it makes you much more directly head-to-head comparable to Firebrand, which is less where you want to be. You don't want to be playing the same game as Firebrand.
So if we're playing that Condi build, how many free utility slots do we have? So if we're playing Ritualist Berserker, what does our utility bar look like? We obviously want the Berserker heal, right? And yes. I think we want Shattering Blow. But
Shattering Blow is like optional. Like those are just DPS increases.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, they make your Berserk last longer, but I feel like you could take triple banners.
Triple banner?
And yeah, because or maybe you just want Headbutt Outrage and then 2 banners.
Okay.
Just so that you get the maximum amount of.
Then you got a lot of CC in there as well, right? With the
and then you have a lot of CC, and you get the most extra duration of your Berserk for the least slots.
Yeah. So then we're doing Outrage Headbutt then perhaps, and then 2 banners.
Yep.
So
and then maybe either tactics for sure.
Yeah.
And then either defense or discipline.
Yeah. Depending on what you might need. Yeah. I could definitely see some kind of defense tactics and then decent DPS build actually being surprisingly attractive. Again, we have to see the numbers. But if that were, let's imagine that it's would they make it like 3k barrier baseline? That might be it's a relatively long cooldown. I feel like you could probably get away with that. That would be a pretty good ability. Maybe it would even be more than that. More like 4k maybe? Something like that.
Yeah.
It's interesting, I think. I think this is a potentially interesting build. Like, you're giving Aegis out during all of that as well. You'll have decent stability uptime. I could definitely see that Ritualist build, or, potentially some kind of power build as well, actually delivering value to the team with either a Berserker or a Bladesworn. So I kind of like it. You're obviously, if you don't need stability or you don't need Barrier and Aegis, you could obviously say take Banner of Discipline, because it's very common that quickness builds apply Fury, like Firebrand does, Scrapper does now as well, right? Rev applies Fury, right? Like Fury is, I guess it's a pretty common boon overall, right? But maybe you want to give Fury on this build with Banner of Discipline. Because I mean, dude, can you imagine? Okay, hear me out. How do you feel if they made Banner of Defense Protection? I thought that would actually be really strong if they did that.
Very OP. But
do you think that's too far? Is that too far?
No, it's not too far. Firebrand exists. You can't go too far.
Yeah. If it was 2 seconds of prot, I thought that would be pretty fucking good. Because then what we're doing, because regen on this build, there's not going to be Heal Warrior. It ain't happening, right? No way.
No.
With these, no. So I think if we make this protection, we then have a warrior build that does probably solid DPS, probably in like the mid-20s with our Ritualist Berserker or something like that. We're giving quickness, stability, super speed, Aegis, protection. Okay, that sounds like a build. That's actually pretty fucking good if you have something like that, I'd say. So I think maybe that slight change puts this where it needs to be. And then when we go back and create Heal Warrior, I think we just add a heal banner. Am I crazy? Just literally add a heal banner to this.
Like a pulsing heal?
Yeah, a pulsing heal. Yeah. I mean, that actually might be kind of OP, to be honest, but...
Yeah. Probably. Oh. But yeah, now that I think about it, if it's Condi Warrior, then you could just run Firebrand runes, and you don't need Ritualist gear at all.
Exactly. You'll need very low boon duration, like very, very low duration, yeah.
Because you're not going to be looking to get, you're not going to mace your whole build around getting 100% resistance uptime. Like, just, 80% resistance uptime is probably good enough.
Yeah. There might be some niche cases where you might want 100. For example,
Yeah.
actually, wait, no, you wouldn't need to actually, because I was immediately thinking of Harvest Temple Challenge mode, right, with the Zaitan Fear, which is where that resistance would actually be sick, right? It would be really good. But then I'm thinking, wait a minute, you would just save it and drop it, and then it would stack up, right? And then it would give you the boons you need with like a relatively low amount of duration, and you'll have the resistance anyway, right?
And the other good things like the Aegis on defense and the stability on tactics, like boon duration isn't like the most, and super speed isn't affected by boon duration, so those things. Like you don't need to invest to make them good, because ideally you're going to Aegis like proactively when you need it. Right? You know what I mean? Like if you know there's a key thing that you have to Aegis, you're going to play. You're
going to save it, or to barrier, in fact, right? You know, you'll just drop it down when you need it, right? And because you're overcapping boons, you're going to have a little bit of flexibility on not necessarily using it off cooldown, potentially. You won't, because again, we've got these relatively high durations. So with a little bit of boon duration slapped on there with a Fire Baron or a few Ritualist pieces, that means you're going to be able to say, okay, I've got quickness up for another 5 seconds, so I can either wait a little bit and see if I need to use this banner in a reactive sense, or I can just like drop it down again and get more uptime.
Yep.
So I think that the really key thing to take away from this, in my opinion, and I don't know if you tell me if you feel the same, is that the design here feels like it's got legs, right? This can work. This can be good, I think.
Yep, I think you will probably see a lot of people in other PvE things like open world PvE playing these and just like dropping tons of banners everywhere in open world and just boon spamming, which will be perfectly fine. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. And yes, people are pointing out that you need to have a lot of damage to compete with Firebrand, and you're absolutely correct. Firebrand, it's pretty fucking hard, even while giving quickness. But I feel that number issues are way easier to resolve than design issues. Like, my problem with banners last patch, or this patch rather, isn't that the number on DPS is really low. It's that they were badly designed, right? They just... there was no way it could be good. Whereas this, maybe Berserker, let's say Berserker does, let's be really pessimistic and say that the build that you end up playing here does like 22k DPS. Well, that's not the end of the universe. We can just buff Warrior and give it more damage, right? That's fine. That's easy, right? That change the number in the database, done, right?
Oh, I wish.
Yeah. But if we have a design issue, then we can't fix it nearly. You're going to have to redesign the skill like they've done here, right? They've completely redesigned how these banners work. So that's why I think it's
a good starting point for sure.
Yeah, exactly right. So yeah, feeling very optimistic about these changes. Definitely can't wait to see the actual numbers, which is that next Tuesday? It is, isn't it? Goodness me, time flies. But yeah, next Tuesday we'll actually see this come into the game, and yeah, very exciting stuff. As a kind of a final thought on this, Nike, you know, Warrior main, do you feel inclined to, get back into, log back in, get ready to go, blast the Warrior?
Yeah, I'm enjoying playing Bladesworn DPS. And, I have no interest in playing with banners anymore.
Yeah.
Not me.
Yeah, but Bladesworn is really strong now, isn't it, actually? Because it got another 5%, it got that 5% crit buff, right? Which helps it a bit.
Pretty nice.
But anyway, that's it. That's my analysis on this stuff. We'll talk about it a little bit more on Tuesday when it actually drops. So stay tuned for that. And every video I have right now is an advert for Master of the Arena. You guys should definitely go and watch Master of the Arena. It's this weekend. It might be right now if you're watching this on the weekend. So there you go. Get over there. Follow my stream. Subscribe on YouTube. Hand over all your money to me, everywhere you want, You can do Patreon, you can do Twitch, you can do PayPal. Just give it all. All of it. And that's it. I'm out of here, gamers. That is it. We're done. We're done with this, at least for now.